So to answer the one burning question that comes up over and over and over again, while I may be tired, I don't look tired. I'm just getting old. So I'm going to talk about this idea of aging into our authentic self, because I'm really noticing something awesome happen as I get older and not so awesome. So we have to decide which is more important, what's going on the inside or what's going on the outside. But before we do that, we're going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to see you on the other side.
Hush now, baby, don't you cry, don't you cry.
So I see this comment come up quite a bit on how I look. And the reality is I do look tired, because most of the time I am tired, but you know, I am not getting any younger, and there's only so much I can do with lighting and editing. And if I had better lighting and a makeup artist, I might be able to fudge it just a little bit longer. But for now, there's just a reality happening. I am not getting younger, but more importantly, I'm not invested in looking younger. And I think the number one thing that we've seen, oh shit, I have the camera on the steps for the dogs to get up to the platform. So one was up, one was down. Now they're both up. Okay, so where was I? One of the other things that happens, right, is I just can't remember anything anymore. And that might be because I'm tired, or it might be because I'm older, or it might be because it's really hard to focus in this world today. So my authentic self, your authentic self. And as I get older, you know, I'm having this thing happen that I actually really like, and that is people are not paying attention, right, to the way we look. There's a saying that says, now the dog is playing with her food. There's a saying that says, you know, when you're 18, you think everybody's looking at you. When you're 40, you realize nobody's looking at you. But when you're 65, you wish somebody was looking at you. And that's not true for me. I don't like it when people look or comment or are concerned or engaged, right, with physical appearance as a measure of who I am. And that's a battle almost all women have, and we all have very different experiences within that. And one of the things I'm moving towards in this process with you, and why I've been talking about women and the feminine, is, you know, I believe our life is divided into 4 stages. There's 3 traditionally, right? There's maiden, mother, crone. Don't like that word. But I really think there's 4. And the first 2, I would stay the same, right? You know, 0 to 25, we're really coming into our identity as a woman. And it is very physical, because we are theoretically preparing to have children. And we want to attract a mate, and a lot of that is based, you know, on physical attraction. And so we are, as young girls, right, we're trying to find our way in the world, and our power is our appearance in very, very many ways, whatever that is. You know, then we move into our mother, parenting, family, relationship phase, like 25 to 40, 50, depending on when you have children. And that's about your role as wife, your role as mother. Or if you're like me, you didn't have children, it's more about your relationship with your mission. You know, I intentionally did not have children because the mission was more important to me. So that's a little wired for danger thing. We are more mission oriented than we are relationship oriented. Not wrong and not bad, just a few of us operate, but that chunk of time is still what's valuable. What we're focused on is usually something outside of ourself, right? The mission, the children, the family, the career, whatever it is that's captured your attention, the art. Then the 50 to 75-ish, you know, there's a real transition that happens for women between 50 and 60, or whenever you are menopausing, which is why I've changed appearances, is your hormones crash, and you have a lot of significant shifts as you lose all those hormones that made you mommy and that made you crazy, right, when you were young. And physiologically, it used to be, who knows what's happening out in the world today, is that women in their 50s had a lot more testosterone. And so even if you were, focused on mommy and wife, in your 50s, when your testosterone used to rise naturally, again, who knows what's happening with that, is that we became more activists, we became more out in the world, or we became focused on more of a mission or creativity or some other way to be in the world besides the role of mother and wife. And nowadays, there's a lot of taking care of parents, so there's still some mixed up timelines along that. But it's also a period for us who have moved into that phase as a sense of mastery, right? It's when we're really good at something. We've spent all this time and energy investing ourselves in something. It may be we're a really good parent. It might be we're a really good teacher. It might be we're a really good artist. It might be we're really good at relationships. We're good at something because we've invested a lot of time and energy in our adult years pushing out into the world to be good at something. Makes sense, right? And so that period of time is also very, transitional for us as women, as I am now engaged actively in that, is that, we're waning in our physical appearance. We don't have the same experience out in the world that we did when we were younger. It's not important. For some of us, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry for a lot of other people because we have in America created this insane cultural identity in the youth. We've given the power to the youth. We've given authority to youth. We've given physical looking young, looking vital as somehow being more important than who we become as we age. And I think that's just a huge mistake, but you get to pick and choose who and how you want to be in the world. I don't remember what the numbers are, but the amount of money that women and now men are investing in skin creams and plastic surgery to appear younger is shocking. This is what you look like. You can look at my videos from 10 years ago. I look very different. And that's, most of this stuff is still a little bit of lighting and editing and, trying to blur out some of the realities that are happening here and here. But, here, I don't know, our hands get really bad, right? And so we have to decide if that's who we want to be. Do we want to be the physical person that everybody sees out in the world as our identity, as our value system? Or do we want to start doing that inner work? Now, I've always done the inner work, but I had the luxury of doing that because I did not have children and a husband. I intentionally did not have children. I prefer to be out of a relationship because it took up too much of my time and energy. It took away from my mission. Not right or wrong, just how I'm wired and how you're wired. But we are now collectively, as the children grow up and move out of the house, coming to a point where I think as women we can come back together. There was a real divide for me when my friends all started to get married and have kids. That's just what you talked about. There's the dog people. We talk about our dogs like they're our children. But there was a huge shift in this ability to maintain relationships because if you didn't have kids, I don't even really, I'm not invested in them. I don't enjoy hanging out with kids, and I really don't enjoy talking about children. But I value having children so strongly, I intentionally chose to not have them because I didn't trust my ability to not literally screw them up, both physically, biologically, with my personal wiring system, and with all that entails, especially when I was in my 20s. So I worked really hard to stabilize, and I would not have been very good at motherhood when I was young. But I always had animals. That was my way of connecting to that mothering home part of me, but it was more manageable. One, I was less likely to emotionally cripple them with any kind of outburst or ignoring. Two, they keep me very structured, which is super important to me. But three, I like that. I like being around that kind of relationship, which is to me authentic. So we all have a different path. But that 50 to 75-ish is a real transition period, I think, for women in a very powerful way, because it's a moment where we can move into what, I'm talking about is this, our truly authentic self, because so much of who we are and have been defined as women is the role of support to everybody else. Now, I never took that on the way most women do. I didn't have to. I had the luxury of not having to make that decision or choose to live that way, because I chose something different for myself intentionally. I knew what it was. I didn't want that. But I think what's really interesting is we're hearing a lot of young women who are feminists super angry at the 50 plus generation for wanting to be different, wanting to step away from just being a role, just being someone who lives and breathes and dies to take care of your mother, your children and your husband. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the purpose of all of where we're moving emotionally and culturally is the power and the ability to choose. But I'm concerned when I start to see young women speak to a romanticized version of the past in which women had the luxury of just being moms and wives and not having to worry about anything else. Because the lesson I learned as a social worker when I was working with this fourth group, right, the over 75, or that transition period where you really start to see a lot of physiological changes and you're really slowing down, they all outlived their husbands. And that was a time women didn't know how to balance a checkbook. They weren't allowed to have credit. They didn't know how to take care of themselves. Can you imagine being 80 years old and all of a sudden being alone in your house? You don't know how to pay your bills. You don't know how much money you have. You don't know how to do anything out in the world. That was terrifying. And I remember making the decision, I am not going to do that. It isn't something that made sense. And so, the beauty of history is it can teach us how we want to move forward. And the, devastating truth by not looking at realistic history is we just keep making the same mistakes over and over. And, for people who are my age, we're in this amazing period where we can remember how it was, and we're seeing where it's going. And I think we have such an important role of remembering how it was and keeping that story alive while picking and choosing what works best. And I think what most of us who are older realize, having it all at once, it isn't realistic, because what's the one battle cry that women have been screaming since the beginning of time? Maybe not the young girls now, but in the past it was, I'm just too tired, right? I'm so tired. I remember my mom asking my grandmother, she said when she was young, like, why don't you ever talk about your feelings? My grandma saying, feelings? I don't have time for feelings. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I can't talk about or have feelings because there's just too much to do. And now, we're all feelings and almost responsible for doing nothing. But there's a balance in that. And so, when I talk about this last stage, right? So I would call, 50 to 75-ish when you're sort of in your stage of mastery. I like sage way better than crone. But really the last chunk is being an elder. That's when you have the most wisdom. That's when traditionally, culturally, you were most respected, because you were no longer physically participating in the world or in your community or in your tribe in a dynamic way, but you were very powerful in who you were within, your history, your knowledge, your true authenticity, who you came in this world to be, and how valuable that is to share. And how I don't think that happens anymore. Does it? I don't know. I really feel badly and very sadly about where we've moved with older people. But on the other hand, we're doing it to ourselves. And so I like what's happening to me. I like being able to step away from being out in the world as how I look and what I'm doing and all these things that seem to be so important to Western civilization. I don't think they are traditional for most indigenous cultures. I don't think in our past we judged people for getting older as being useless and worthless as we do in the world today. And I also think that we are part of the problem. We have to make decisions about who and how we want to be as we move forward and get older. And is it important for us to connect with younger generations, tell them the real stories about the way things were, so that we don't continue to do this pendulum back and forth backlash thing that we've got going on? And, you know, there may never be a time when women aren't tired, right? The one thing I think we all have in common is there's always more to do than there's time and energy to get it all done. And that's really, you know, a lot of what you're hearing me say is that my, you know, last 12 plus years of chop wood and carry water, that's about all I've got the time and energy to do. And so I really want to do some other things, you know, besides chop wood and carry water, even though I still have to do it. A lot of this is a psychological shift about what I need to let go of and the reality of what's coming down the pike and where I can be, you know, in that process. And, you know, as we move into a period of time where the old world is being deconstructed, and those of us who are older are not or may not be physically capable of survival, doing it all alone, right? I'm strong, I can take it. Those days, you know, are coming fast to an end for a lot of us, and we have to make some decisions about that. You know, you've heard me talk a lot about women really needing to figure out how to come together and work together so that we can create a version for ourselves as we get older, because we usually outlive men. And there's just a dynamic that happens and it's just women, or there's men within that female group. And it's not a right or wrong thing, it's just the way it is. So I just wanted to start this conversation about really where I'm going with all this. But I like this process. I like what's going on for me internally. I like all the things that I'm now giving myself permission to let go of. And that was really kind of there's all things floating in the air here. That was really like this aha moment for me, you know, a month ago when the trailer is just too heavy. I just have too much stuff. I can't physically deal with the heaviness and the physical exertion that it takes for this life that I've created for myself. Now, my intention was to use it to stay very physically active. I mean, I designed the inside so that I was doing all kinds of different movements. Now, you know, it's like a death trap in terms of me, one wrong move and boom, you know, I fall down and I crack my head open. And so my intentions were very good. My reality has shifted, and you know, my energy has shifted. The world has shifted in ways that maybe we thought we understood, but you never really know till you get there. I thought it would all get crazy like this 10 years ago when I was very much able to be part of the survival movement. Now I understand it. I hold a lot of wisdom. I don't see it as being very valuable, though, for most people. So I think we got a long way to go in terms of what we do value. But my conversation with you here now is, whether you're a man or a woman, we are in a moment where we get to age into who we really want to be. Because in many ways, time is short. And if it's not going to be now, when is it going to be? None of us knows what the future holds. Every day seems to be a new level of heightened crisis. But I had something given to me a very long time ago. I didn't know what to do with it. I really feel like this lifetime has trained me for those ideas that I'm just now, here they go, sinking into. This is the new system. They don't like getting squirted, and so they will stop barking. See, they stopped. I like who I'm becoming on the inside, but I'm still in transition trying to figure out how to manage that on the outside. I wasn't planning on 2 puppies, but who knows? We never know where life is going to take us. So that's it. That's a deep breath. I hope that you will ask yourself that question and have that conversation. It's an excellent journaling point. Who are you? Who do you want to be? And who are you within, regardless of when anybody around you wants to be true? Because if it's not now, when? But we're all getting older, at least most everybody who watches this channel. Are you aging into your most authentic self, or are you allowing yourself to be terrified into someone or something that you don't want to be or do? I think that's a really important question. I mean, we're at a moment where we get to decide, how do I want to spend this last chunk of time, whether it's a day or a decade? I have no idea. I do know I get to make the decisions for myself. And yes, I know I look tired. I am tired, but I'm not tired of the journey. And I love who it's making me, who I'm becoming, and where it's taking me. So we'll continue this conversation. They're getting ready to go. I'll see you next time. Gotcha. Ah!